And Dre down below, Al Chamu is saying, "What's going on with the mayor of Anaheim?"
Oh boy.
Okay, so we let the cat out of the bag. This is Citrus Corner, folks. But you know what? What the hell? Let's just dive right into it here.
Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Oh boy. Well, this is a story, that was, it's a developing story. This just broke. I spent, the 2 hours that I had leading up to this show, just, researching this and stuff like that. Is a very, very complex story. There are allegations of corruption across the board, not just with the mayor himself, but with the mayor's office, with the people that the mayor interacted with and stuff like that. The story goes is that there was maybe some corruption going on with the recent sale of the Angels Stadium land, right?
Yeah.
Apparently that was approved, but apparently it was approved under the pretenses by which those same buyers would then funnel money into the mayor of Anaheim's campaign, going forward. And that's a big no-no because apparently Anaheim didn't get quite the deal that they were expecting out of the deal. So there was already allegations of impropriety, either from the onset, but because, maybe it was done with this campaign contribution. Definitely a conflict of interest. Definitely something that's a big no-no. Apparently, the FBI. This stems from an investigation that they were doing, and they had an affidavit that alleged all of this kind of potential misconduct. And apparently, it was so bad that it forced the mayor to resign. He's saying that he didn't do anything; that he was looking out for Anaheim's best interests. Yeah. But we'll have to see how this investigation goes forward. But a lot of people are talking about how, wait a minute, we just had a big proposal on the ledger here when it came to the political system at Anaheim, and that was with Disneyland Forward. So a lot of people are saying, oh my God, this deal might be dead, and so Disneyland Forward might be affected. And there are already city council members, some of which who were, asking for the mayor to resign. There's some city council members already saying, hey, we're going to have to earn back the trust of the public, and maybe we do some things to do that. Is Disneyland Forward affected by that? Oh, I don't know. Very early.
And being that you just mentioned that statement, Dre, I'm going to say this to all our listeners because we actually had a little bit of this conversation before we started recording. Sure. And it was OG that actually brought this up, that if you, as us, as a community of Disney fans, if you want to see Disneyland Forward going forward, put your voice out there because, as OG had mentioned, if the land doesn't get approved and it doesn't expand on, there's only one way for Disneyland to keep on evolving, and that is going through existing attractions. So if you have some issues with that, be vocal about this. And
yeah. Right. No, yeah, exactly. We talked about that in the pregame. We talked before we went live. We talked about it in the pregame, and that's exactly it. Here's the thing: a lot of fans, a lot of locals in California, like the Disneyland Resort locals, they don't like change. So the Disneyland Forward thing is very scary because, oh my God, it's a lot of change at once. Oh my God! But here's the thing, you guys: if that doesn't move forward, no pun intended, if that doesn't move forward, then you have to understand that Disney still needs to bring people into the parks. They're going to add stuff regardless. So what that means now, if they don't have land outside of the perimeter of the parks, they're going to start looking inward. So if you want Tiki Room to remain Tiki Room and not a Moana dark ride or something like that, I highly suggest that you push for Disneyland Forward, because that's really the best way to prevent that kind of thing from happening, because you're not forcing Disney to look inward. They're going to start cannibalizing their own stuff like they do in Walt Disney World if they don't have room to grow outside of the perimeter. You need that room, and without Disneyland Forward, you're not going to have that. So I know there's this really kind of sense of well, yeah, I like Disneyland the way it is. That's fine. But if Disneyland Forward doesn't go forward, it's not going to be the way it is. They're going to start removing attractions because they have to remove attractions to put the new stuff in there. It's going to happen, you guys.
But now, like a couple weeks ago, wasn't it posted on Twitter that they were kind of having like this outdoor like campaigning type thing where they had like the signs and everything? So could this have been already put in motion that these people kind of knew where it was going? So they're kind of like slowly trying to progress people to say, hey, you know, try to get on this train for Disneyland Forward to kind of get it moving. But on the other note, I'm also looking at it optimistically that we were also talking about the 18-month, excuse me, time frame, which it's going to be around the expo time. So does that hinder anything for the expo as far as the greenlit news for Disneyland Forward?
Potentially. I mean, I think the greenlit news was already going to come out because those city council, you know, when those votes are public. So I think the word was already going to get out as far as it affecting the expo. I mean, it could if the announcement was part of that. I'll say this though, this decision lies with the residents of Anaheim. So if you are a Disneyland fan or a Disney fan and you live in Anaheim, that's how you can contribute towards this process. Right. Unfortunately, nobody on the outside can contribute in any meaningful way because it's not the community they live in. So that's kind of a.
So do you think that's why that they had like those outdoor little pavilion things to try to get? So I mean, do you think that they actually kind of knew what was going on before this statement was released about the stadium, so to speak?
I'm not sure. You know, it's interesting. We did a show a few weeks ago talking about how the development at the stadium may be correlated with the mindset of Anaheim going forward with Disneyland Forward, right? That, you know, this mayor was very pro-business. He was very much in pro-economic investment in the community and how these things may have been linked in that way. Well, unfortunately, there was some impropriety going on as well. And hopefully they're not linked to the extent that one affects the other in this direct way, especially with the allegations of corruption and so forth. It's going to be quite fascinating. But look, you know, George, to your point, you know, when Westcott was initially announced, you know, they thought the community would embrace what they were doing with open arms. They got a lot of pushback from it. I mean, a lot of pushback to the point where, you know, some other things happened in that project's development life cycle, and they unfortunately didn't end up going that way, largely in part to the to the feedback that they received from the community of Anaheim, and that was reflected in the city council and so forth. You know, when it comes to this, I think they wanted to get out early to say, hey, look, listen, this will not only benefit us in terms of expansion, but it'll also benefit the city of Anaheim in a number of ways. Here's how it'll do so. They've been really very much playing towards Anaheim in terms of the PR and so forth to kind of get them on board. And I think a lot of people are on board. I think this has a lot of support from the residents of Anaheim. And so if it does, I don't think that precludes the city council necessarily from, you know, axing this just because, you know, a side project that may have been implicated.
And I also
directly.
Sorry. And I also think too, after like everything with the shutdown and the pandy and what have you, I think this kind of gave the Anaheim residents kind of like a wake up call, so to speak, of how much Disneyland actually progresses the city of Anaheim as a whole community and not just these small other businesses that they assume to say, okay, we don't need Disneyland. You kind of actually do.
You kind of do. I mean, look, they don't. Yeah, Anaheim would be a regular city in Southern California. It would be Covina or Fullerton or insert city name here if it wasn't for Disneyland. Disneyland is really the economic engine of that area. And without Disneyland, we've seen it with the Pandy, the hotels, the businesses all around that area suffer. It's in the best interest of not just Disney, but really the ecosystem of that entire area. And here's the other thing too, that it affects, like, to keep it kind of on topic with Citrus Corner. This is kind of, look, here's the thing. This is what Florida has to look forward to if Reedy Creek gets dissolved, is that you look, here's the thing. Disneyland is so dependent on the whim of politics because they have to get government permission for everything. What do you think is going to happen when they remove Reedy Creek and now suddenly Disney has to go to the county for every little approval? It's the same crap. And this is what you're going to deal with now with no Reedy Creek. So Florida, this is very much a look into the future, so to speak, for you if Reedy Creek is dissolved. Hey, it might not be tomorrow. It might not be a year from now. It might not even be 5 years from now, but eventually there will be political issues because now you're depending more and more on those politicians to get approval for your expansions and for your stuff. That's not good. And that's why I've been against the Reedy Creek thing, but that's just me.
But everybody else has to deal with that, OG. Why is Disney so special? Look, I understand the economic driver for Florida and have been for a long time, but that's rapidly changing. Universal's coming up, and so are other theme park proprietors. Why is Disney so special in that? Look, the way I see it, as soon as Disney decided, hey, we're not going to actually build Progress City or Epcot or the City of the Future, they should have had a lot of those privileges revoked. And I'm not saying they revoke every single privilege, but they don't have any oversight. Even on like the waterways when it comes to Walt Disney World that affect the marshlands and so forth, and the overall ecology of Florida, they don't even have oversight over that. They don't have oversight in terms of certain safety protocol and certain liquor licenses and so forth. I mean, it's nuts. It's crazy. Look, I understand Reedy Creek. I get it. That affords them lots of freedoms and opportunities. At the same time, you've given this corporation kind of an outsized role when it comes to Central Florida, and how it's managed and so forth. And I think, the ability to set yourself up your own courts, your own law enforcement, to handle city services that are only given to a city through a democratic process, taking that away, I mean, that's a very controversial thing. Look, I'm not in favor of all of Reedy Creek going away, but substantial parts of it that are like, maybe we shouldn't have given that away. I think some of those things can happen and may be happening as we speak.
That's fair. What do you think, Mr. Family Man? You're the Florida guy. Reedy Creek, how this kind of relates to the whole Disneyland forward thing. It actually does.
It actually does. It's like a full 360. Like, even though we were just talking about Disneyland, and as you said, OG, it does circle back to Walt Disney World, because this is, the sticky situation that when you have to kind of beg and plead to, a political standpoint or a city council or what have you, this is the obstacles that you are facing. And this even goes back even further to the beginning of our conversation when I had mentioned that it's almost like with Disney, you have to have this hyped up demand, where with Universal, whether they had something like Reedy Creek or not, they can kind of get away with it one way or the other, because it's like, as much as Universal is very popular and people are going to it, but there's a missing piece of the puzzle of a high expectation that people have for Disney, as opposed to the other type of themed entertainment industries like Universal, SeaWorld, Six Flags, Busch Gardens. They don't hold the same standard of a caliber that people are holding the Walt Disney Company to. So Universal can have nothing of the sorts of Reedy Creek, right, and they can just kind of keep going, where because Disney had this for 50 plus years and relied on that, and then they're going to have that taken away. It's like, oh my gosh, what do we do from here? Because look what's happening now over at Anaheim. So it's almost like, kind of like with Endgame, kind of like clicking the finger and hitting like that reset button. And it's kind of like having to re-embellish the whole way of how that Disney is being used as a high priority. Now they kind of have to kind of come down to the level of where Universal and SeaWorld and all this, and they have to kind of relearn, if this does happen, they kind of have to relearn those same logistics of running a themed entertainment theme parks through the ways of how these other parks are doing it.
It's an interesting point. And the best, the best argument against the complete abolishment of Reedy Creek is, as OG has said, it invites corruption. And as the Angel Stadium in Anaheim, mayor has figured out, corruption's a big deal. And so it'll be interesting to see how this process goes and how much oversight, the surrounding counties or even the state of Florida actually has. But, getting back to Disneyland here, Marty McFly right there. Yep, after the shutdown, this is Disney's best leverage they have ever had. That is absolutely correct. If you remember, it was very contentious between the city of Anaheim, especially with Mayor Tom Tate, and Disney for a while, right? Eastern Gateway was on, then it was off, right? That was mostly because the businesses kind of that are along Harbor teamed up together and stopped that project from going forward, which, in my opinion, Disney, could have allowed for some cross traffic and some cross pollination in terms of business and throughput for those other businesses, and not have the ramp be so exclusive and so forth. It's a long story, but yes, they could have had something there. The hotel, right? The reason why we're getting a new section to Downtown Disney in large part is because the back half of Downtown Disney was abandoned. Why? Because they were going to set up for the hotel, but it was pulled out from underneath them in terms of the tax rebate and stuff like that, because they moved the spot from 150 feet or whatever. It was going back and forth. And I will say, OG, this touches on something that, we were talking about on the phone earlier, that Josh Giamaro was the guy that kind of, reestablished those relationships with the city and kind of, smooth things over. And then we get into, the incidents of 2020 and beyond, where the whole, Disneyland's completely shut down. That affects Anaheim in a big way. People kind of reevaluate and realize, oh my God, Disneyland does bring in a lot of economic throughput through our town, our community, and so forth. Maybe we should, give them things to kind of get themselves back on their feet, because their success is our success. That kind of symbiotic relationship is reestablished. But, Josh Giamaro, if he's implicated in these kind of corruption allegations that the mayor is currently dealing with when it comes to this sale of this Anaheim property, it could be really, really interesting for the executive leadership at Disney right now.
And that's where I'm kind of at, like, between both sides, whatever side you're on, whether you're for one side or the other, whether it's regarding Disneyland Forward with the city of Anaheim, or it's involving Reedy Creek with Florida. I think it's how it's being handled as to why the circumstances came up in the first place. And I feel that on both spectrums, that if everyone would just kind of sit down and kind of stop doing this schoolyard type of back and forth, getting, hitting one person over the other, like, sit down, be adults, loosen up your necktie, zip up your fly, and get down to business.
Zip up your fly. My God, man. Family show, dude.
It's like loosen up one end, tighten up the other, and like get down to business. Sorry, folks, it was a metaphor really gone bad.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
It's funny, dude.
Sector 2. Malfunction in Sector 2. All droids will be shut down for reloading of labor programs. Stand by for power disconnect.